Admiral Vexthor's crystalline appendages trembled with revulsion as the holographic display showed yet another scan of the blue planet before them. The pristine fleet's flagship, Eternal Sterility, hung in high orbit above what the local inhabitants called Earth, its gleaming white surface reflecting the sun's rays like a perfect mirror. Inconceivable, he transmitted through the ship's telepathic network. The level of biological contamination exceeds anything in our records. His second-in-command, Navigator Pura, floated beside him in their gravity-neutral bridge, her translucent form pulsing with patterns of distress. The scans showed billions of microscopic life forms in every cubic centimeter of the planet's atmosphere. The oceans teemed with organic matter, the land crawled with creatures, and even the air was thick with spores, pollen, and countless flying organisms. To the pristine, who had evolved beyond biological processes eons ago, this was the equivalent of finding a planet-sized garbage dump. The dominant species is particularly troubling, Pura transmitted, bringing up detailed scans of human cities. They voluntarily cohabitate with millions of smaller organisms. Their dwellings are infested with what they call pets and houseplants. Even their own bodies harbor billions of microorganisms. Admiral Vexthor had studied thousands of civilizations across the galaxy, but none had embraced contamination to this degree. Most species naturally evolved toward purification as they advanced, gradually replacing their messy biological components with clean, predictable synthetic alternatives. But humans seem to be moving in the opposite direction, deliberately cultivating more biological diversity. The bridge crew watched in horror as the scans showed humans actually ingesting fermented foods, deliberately consuming living organisms. In their parks, they encouraged wild growth instead of maintaining sterile order. Their medical facilities even explored using viruses to fight diseases, a concept so barbaric it caused several crew members to temporarily shut down from shock. "We must initiate contact," the Admiral decided. "Protocol demands we offer them a chance at purification before we begin cleansing operations." He had performed this duty countless times before, but something about this planet disturbed him on a deeper level. Perhaps it was the way the humans seemed to thrive in their contaminated state, their cities buzzing with an energy that felt almost vital. The communication officer, a being of pure light named Lumi, established a link with the primary human defense facility. The humans' primitive radio waves felt dirty compared to the pristine's pure quantum transmissions, but they managed to make contact. "Greetings, contaminated ones," Admiral Vexthor transmitted. His message automatically translated into human language. "We are the pristine, guardians of cosmic purity. Your world has been designated as a Class 5 biological hazard, requiring immediate cleansing. However, we offer salvation to a selected portion of your population, provided they undergo complete purification." The response came from a human identified as General Diana Winters, her voice carrying an unexpected strength despite coming from a biological throat. "This is Earth's United Defense Command. We appreciate your contact but reject any classification of our world as a hazard. Earth's biodiversity is not contamination. It's our greatest treasure." The Admiral's crystalline form flickered with confusion. Never had he encountered a species that took pride in their contaminated state. "You misunderstand. Your world is infested with chaotic biological processes. We offer you perfection, absolute sterility." What happened next would be recorded in pristine history as the beginning of their greatest challenge. General Winters laughed, a sound that sent ripples of discomfort through the bridge crew, and said, "Perhaps you're the ones who misunderstand. Come down to Earth. See our contamination up close. We'll show you why we choose to live in harmony with nature rather than in sterile isolation." As the Admiral processed this invitation, his sensors detected something troubling. The humans were not showing fear as expected. Instead, their vital signs indicated excitement, curiosity, and even amusement. For the first time in his long existence, Admiral Vexthor felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The pristine had always believed their way was the only path to advancement. But as they orbited this chaotic, messy, incredibly alive world, they were about to learn that perhaps their definition of perfection wasn't as universal as they had thought. The diplomatic team from the pristine fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere in their sealed transport vessel, every surface of their ship radiating with protective fields designed to repel organic matter. Leading the delegation was Science Director Zinare, whose crystalline form contained the most advanced analytical capabilities in the fleet. Fascinating, Zinare transmitted to her colleagues as their sensors recorded the countless interactions occurring in the Brazilian rainforest below them. Their atmosphere is actually maintained by these biological processes we considered contamination. The humans had insisted on showing them this location first, much to the pristine delegation's initial reluctance. Their host, Dr. Rajesh Sharma, stood confidently beside their landing site, his dark eyes twinkling with enthusiasm despite the humid air that the pristine found so offensive. "Welcome to Earth's lungs," he announced as the aliens emerged in their protective fields. "This rainforest produces 20% of our world's oxygen through what you might call contamination." The pristine delegation watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Dr. Sharma led them through the forest. Every scan revealed layers upon layers of life. Fungi breaking down fallen trees to nurture new growth, insects pollinating flowers, bacteria in the soil converting minerals into nutrients. It was chaos by pristine standards, yet somehow it all worked together in perfect harmony. "Observe this," Dr. Sharma said, pointing to a leaf covered in morning dew. "These water droplets contain entire microscopic ecosystems. In your terms, it's incredibly dirty. But this complexity is precisely what makes it beautiful and essential." Science Director Zinare's sensors detected something unprecedented. The interactions between different life forms weren't random as the pristine had always assumed. There was a pattern, a dance of life and death that had evolved over millions of years. Each species, from the smallest bacterium to the largest tree, played a crucial role in maintaining the balance. Their tour continued to a research station where Dr. Sharma's colleague, Dr. Isabella Torres, demonstrated how humans were learning from this contamination. She showed them bio-inspired technologies, solar cells modeled after leaf structures, water filtration systems based on root networks, and building materials that mimicked the strength of spider silk. "What you see as disorder," Dr. Torres explained, handling a piece of experimental biomaterial, "we see as nature's engineering. Every solution you've developed through synthetic means, nature has already perfected through evolution." The pristine delegation struggled to process this perspective. Their own civilization had achieved technological marvels through absolute control and elimination of biological variables. Yet here were humans, embracing the very chaos the pristine had spent millennia trying to eliminate and achieving remarkable results. A young researcher named Gene Park approached with a microscope, offering the visitors a closer look at a sample of healthy soil. "In one handful of this filthy earth," he explained, "there are more living organisms than there are stars in our galaxy. Each one contributes to the whole." Science Director Zinare made an unprecedented decision. She temporarily lowered her protective field to analyze the soil directly with her advanced sensors. The data that flooded her systems was overwhelming: nutrients cycling through countless organisms, chemical signals passing between roots and fungi, microscopic creatures maintaining the delicate pH balance. "This is not contamination," she transmitted to her stunned colleagues. "This is communication. These organisms aren't just coexisting, they're cooperating on a scale we never imagined possible." The humans exchanged knowing smiles as they watched the pristine delegates begin to understand. What had looked like cosmic untidiness from orbit was revealing itself to be an intricate tapestry of life, each thread essential to the whole. Back on the Eternal Sterility, Admiral Vexthor received Zinare's preliminary report with growing unease. The science director's data suggested that the very principles upon which pristine civilization was built, the pursuit of absolute sterility, might have caused them to miss something fundamental about the nature of life itself. As the sun set over the rainforest, casting golden light through the canopy, Dr. Sharma made one final observation. "You call Earth the filthiest place in the universe," he said, watching a line of leafcutter ants carry their harvest home. "We call it the only place we know of where life has truly learned to dance." For the first time in their history, the pristine began to wonder if perhaps they had been cleaning up the wrong kind of mess. Lieutenant Nyla Patel leaned back in her chair at the Global Science Initiative headquarters, watching the pristine delegates examine the contaminated cup of yogurt before them. The alien's crystalline forms flickered with what she had learned to recognize as distress. "You deliberately cultivate these microscopic organisms," transmitted senior cultural observer Ixel, their form shifting from translucent to cloudy with confusion. "And then you consume them?" "Probiotics," Dr. Marcus Reeves explained, pushing his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose. "These beneficial bacteria help us digest food, strengthen our immune systems, and maintain our health. We're not just individual organisms, we're walking ecosystems." The revelation that humans were essentially symbiotic colonies had nearly caused a diplomatic incident when first discovered. The Pristine had almost canceled all direct contact, believing humans to be some form of viral hive mind. Now, 3 weeks into their mission to understand Earth's contamination problem, they were beginning to grasp the complexity of biological life. "Show them the agricultural project," Nyla suggested, leading the delegation to the facility's experimental farming wing. Here, robots worked alongside traditional farmers, tending to crops that grew in soil enriched by composting, a process that had particularly horrified the Pristine when first explained. "Your civilization achieved space travel while still relying on biological food production?" asked Ixel, scanning the hydroponic gardens with their advanced sensors. "We eliminated such inefficient processes millennia ago." Dr. Reeves nodded, plucking a ripe tomato from a vine. "We could have developed synthetic nutrition like you did, but we discovered something interesting. The more we tried to sterilize and control our food production, the more we lost. Flavors, nutrients, the joy of cooking and sharing meals, these aren't inefficiencies, they're essential parts of human culture." The Pristine delegation processed this information silently. Their own society had long ago abandoned physical pleasure as primitive, focusing solely on intellectual and technological advancement. Yet they couldn't deny that humanity had achieved remarkable progress while maintaining these primitive biological connections. In the biotech lab, Chief Researcher Dr. Fatima Al-Rahman demonstrated how humanity was learning to work with nature rather than against it. "These bacteria," she explained, pointing to a culture growing in a petri dish, "are helping us clean up oil spills. These fungi break down plastic waste. We're not trying to eliminate the mess. We're partnering with nature to solve our problems." Senior observer Ixel's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been excitement. "You're suggesting that biological contamination can be beneficial?" "Life isn't contamination," Fatima replied firmly. "It's adaptation, innovation, survival. Look at this." She brought up a holographic display showing the evolution of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. "When we try to create completely sterile environments, nature adapts. The harder we push for absolute cleanliness, the stronger the resistance becomes." The implication struck the Pristine delegation like a physical blow. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of achieving perfect sterility, yet here was evidence that such pursuit might be fundamentally flawed. In the facility's garden, maintained for both research and employee well-being, Nyla watched a butterfly land on a flower. The Pristine delegates, despite their initial revulsion, found themselves mesmerized by the simple beauty of the interaction. "Your civilization chose a different path than ours," transmitted Ixel, their tone carrying new understanding. "While we sought to eliminate biological processes, you chose to understand and work with them. We saw this as primitive, but perhaps there's wisdom in embracing a little chaos," Nyla finished. "Every breakthrough we've made in medicine, technology, and environmental science has come from studying the very systems you considered contamination." As the day drew to a close, the Pristine delegation prepared to return to their ship. But before they left, Dr. Reeves noticed them doing something unprecedented. They were collecting samples of soil, plants, and microorganisms for study. "Just remember," he called after them, "sometimes the most important discoveries come from the messiest experiments." Back on their ship, the Pristine began to question everything they had believed about progress and civilization. Their pursuit of perfect cleanliness had led them to create incredible technology, but had it also closed them off from understanding fundamental truths about life itself? The answer, they were beginning to realize, might lie in the very contamination they had spent millennia trying to eliminate. Admiral Vex Thor faced the most challenging decision of his long existence. The holographic displays aboard the Eternal Sterility showed mounting evidence that challenged everything the Pristine had believed for millennia. His crystalline form rippled with unprecedented emotions as he reviewed the latest reports from Earth. Impossible, he transmitted to his assembled command staff. Their contaminated methods have achieved something we never could. The display showed data from a breakthrough in human medical research, a cancer treatment that used modified viruses to target diseased cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. Professor James Wilson had demonstrated the technique to the Pristine scientific team just hours earlier. Nature has spent billions of years developing these mechanisms, he had explained, his dark skin contrasting with his pristine white lab coat. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, we're learning from what already works. The Pristine's own medical technology, despite its advancement, still relied on completely destroying affected areas and replacing them with synthetic components. The elegant precision of the human approach was, ironically, cleaner. There's more, transmitted science directors NRA, who had spent weeks studying Earth's ecosystems. Their planetary defense system isn't just their military, it's their biodiversity itself. She displayed images of how Earth's various species had survived multiple extinction events, always adapting, always finding new ways to continue. The Pristine civilization, for all its technological advancement, was vulnerable precisely because of its sterility. They had no redundancy, no adaptation, no variation. Every world they controlled was identical, perfectly clean and perfectly fragile. In the ship's research lab, Navigator Pura was conducting unprecedented experiments. She had been inspired by watching Earth's weather systems, how storms cleared the air, how floods redistributed nutrients, how even forest fires sparked new growth. Their disorder contains a deeper order, she transmitted, one that we've been blind to. The evidence was becoming undeniable. The humans' primitive embrace of biological processes had led them to develop technologies that the Pristine, despite their head start of thousands of years, had never conceived. Their medical techniques were more precise, their agricultural systems more sustainable, their adaptive capabilities far superior. A transmission from Earth interrupted their discussion. Dr. Catherine Henderson, director of the Global Science Initiative, appeared on the main screen. "Admiral," she said, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, "we've reviewed your society's technical databases that you shared with us. We believe we've found a solution to your civilization's recurring stability issues." The Admiral's form pulsed with interest. The Pristine had been experiencing increasing system failures across their worlds. Their perfect sterility was becoming harder to maintain, requiring more and more energy. "Your pursuit of absolute sterility," Dr. Henderson continued, "has created environments that are too perfect to be stable. You need controlled diversity, what we call healthy biodiversity. Without beneficial organisms to occupy ecological niches, harmful ones eventually find ways to infiltrate and multiply unchecked." The implications were staggering. The Pristine's endless battle against contamination was actually making their worlds more vulnerable, not less. They had created the exact problem they were trying to solve. "We propose a collaboration," Dr. Henderson offered. "Let us help you introduce carefully selected biological systems to your worlds. Not to replace your technology, but to work alongside it. Think of it as adding redundancy to your systems, but using nature's time-tested methods." The bridge crew waited in tense silence as Admiral Vex Thor processed this proposal. It went against everything the Pristine had believed in for countless generations. Yet the evidence was clear. Their definition of perfection was fundamentally flawed. "The cleanest solution," he finally transmitted, his form stabilizing with decision, "is not always the best solution." The words felt revolutionary, heretical even, but undeniably true. As the Admiral prepared to transmit his acceptance of the human's offer, he realized that the Pristine had made a profound error in their initial assessment. Earth wasn't the filthiest place in the universe. It was perhaps the only place that had truly understood how to maintain long-term stability through controlled chaos. The irony was not lost on him. In their quest for perfect cleanliness, the Pristine had created systems too pure to survive. It took a contaminated world to show them the way back to true sustainability. 5 years after the Pristine's first contact with Earth, Admiral Vex Thor stood in the observation dome of the newly constructed Terrestrial Pristine Research Center on Mars. His crystalline form had evolved, now incorporating organic elements that would have been unthinkable in the past. Around him, both human scientists and Pristine researchers worked together, their differences becoming their greatest strength. The latest results from Colony Beta are extraordinary, transmitted Dr. Indira Verma, her holographic presence filling the chamber. As Earth's leading expert on biomechanical integration, she had been instrumental in helping the Pristine transform their worlds. The introduced ecosystems have reduced energy consumption by 60%, while improving overall system stability by 43%. The Admiral's form glowed with satisfaction as he reviewed the data. Where once there had been sterile, energy-hungry environments requiring constant maintenance, now there were carefully balanced ecosystems working in harmony with Pristine technology. They hadn't abandoned their advanced capabilities, they'd enhanced them with Earth's messy wisdom. Who would have thought, remarked Professor William Blackwood, adjusting the controls of a quantum biological interface, that our greatest contribution to interstellar civilization would be teaching advanced aliens how to get their hands dirty? The revolution had spread rapidly through Pristine society once the benefits became clear. Their worlds, once identical in their sterility, now boasted unique biospheres adapted to local conditions. The diversity they had feared for so long became their greatest asset. In the laboratory section, Junior Science Officer Telare, part of the first generation of Pristine to incorporate organic components, worked alongside human researchers. They were developing new technologies that merged the precision of Pristine engineering with the adaptability of biological systems. The paradigm shift wasn't just technological, transmitted Telare, their partly crystalline form shimmering with enthusiasm. It was philosophical. We had to learn that perfection isn't found in absolute sterility, but in balanced systems that can adapt and evolve. The changes hadn't been easy. Many among the Pristine had initially resisted, seeing the integration of biological elements as a step backward. But the results were undeniable. Their civilization, which had been showing signs of stagnation, was now entering a new golden age of discovery and innovation. Remember when you called Earth the filthiest place in the universe? Dr. Verma asked, her hologram showing a slight smile. Now your people are paying premium rates for our soil samples. Admiral Vex Thor's form pulsed with what humans had taught him to recognize as amusement. The greatest irony was that Earth's contamination had saved the Pristine from their own perfection. Their obsession with sterility had been leading them down a path of increasing isolation and vulnerability. In the center's garden dome, a remarkable sight captured the essence of their transformation. Pristine crystals grew alongside earth plants, their structures intertwining in ways that enhanced both. The crystals provided perfect growing conditions, while the plants maintained optimal environmental balance. We thought we were coming to cleanse Earth, the Admiral transmitted to his assembled staff. Instead, Earth cleaned us of our most dangerous contamination, our rigid thinking. The observation dome filled with light as Mars' sunset painted the sky in shades of red and gold. Human and Pristine alike paused to appreciate the view, a moment of shared beauty that transcended their differences. Perhaps, Professor Blackwood mused, the universe isn't divided into clean and dirty after all. Maybe it's just divided into systems that work and systems that don't. As night fell on Mars, the research center's bioluminescent gardens began to glow, a perfect symbol of how humanity's mess and Pristine technology had combined to create something entirely new. The greatest lesson learned wasn't about cleanliness or contamination. It was about the power of embracing complexity, of finding strength in diversity, and of being humble enough to learn from those we once thought beneath us. The filthiest place in the universe, it turned out, had been the cleanest all along. It just took an entirely different perspective to see it.